This is what I call class 7, 8, and 9 tonight, each of the 3 hours. We've spent a lot of time covering like bylaws. I want to sort of disclaim tonight by saying that this course is not a course in bylaws. It's just an important subset. Bylaws define how the corporation operates, who the real decision makers are. Hey, Tom. That defines what your board structure is. The board is really the ultimate decision-making, ultimate authority in a corporation. So it's important for you to know that it exists, how it works, the purpose of it. It really tends to function sort of like an umbrella, like hovering over the organization and at key times having input, but it's not like, in terms of your day in, day out life, it's not about the board, it's about the operations of the church, but still we want you to understand it. What I want to do tonight is just talk about, we're going to continue and hopefully close out discussion about boards tonight, but I wanted to sort of pause and talk about churches tend to be non-profit organizations, non-profit corporations. I want to contrast that with for-profit corporations because I think it'll help you and it'll help us think about how we should be thinking, because certain attitudes can creep in to non-profit organizations that don't have so much of a place there. So we're going to spend some time on that. I should say also, just as another disclaimer, that we all understand that, you know, you or I might go to some country, we might go out, knock on doors, win souls, start a Bible study, and you can do all of that. That's really the work of the church. That can all be done without having a board, without knowing what a nonprofit corporation. So I don't want to over-detailize, but we're going to. But just keep the big picture in mind. So here we go. With a for-profit corporation, how many people here have jobs other than for the church? Okay. Okay. Lisa, where do you work besides the church? Oh, I'm sorry. Where's Mike Woman? Okay, there you go. All right.
I'm a caregiver.
Okay. So you work in someone's home, okay?
Yeah.
Pass the mic back to Thomas Colban there. Who do you work for, sir?
Safe Home Chimneys.
Safe Home Chimneys? Do I know the principal, who the owner of that company, or is that no one I know? Oh, okay. All right, I know him. Okay, great. Back to your seat, Ms. Carolina. Thank you. Okay, so here we go. Most of us that are working, we're out working for for-profit corporations like Safe Home Chimneys. And when you talk about like the motivation or the purpose of a corporation, it's like very important. A for-profit corporation, its purpose is to make money, is to have a profit, okay? Doesn't mean they're bad people, doesn't mean they're ruthless business people, doesn't mean all they care about is money, but that's why it exists. I think that I can go into the marketplace, I can make an investment in this marketplace, provide a service, and at the end of the day, there's going to be something left over. I'm going to end up with more money than it took me to get this thing going. If you don't have that, you're going to be out of business. That's the facts of the case. That's it. So the profit's very important. Now, for a nonprofit corporation, that's the world we're living in the church, the purpose why that organization exists is to fulfill the mission of the organization, okay? Now, do for-profit corporations have mission statements? Yes, they do. But always included in their mission statement is going to be words to the effect is to operate at a reasonable profit, okay? At a reasonable return on investment. They'll have other values also, like, you know, we intend to be the premier residential chimney care company in the greater Baltimore region. I guess some goal like that. So that's that's who we are, but to operate, maybe number one would be to operate safely, but also to have a reasonable profit. Well, churches don't have that. They'll have a mission, and I think it's kind of in the bylaws here. It's probably also back in the Articles of, and this is not like the most concise mission statement, but the purpose of this church shall be to carry forward the orthodox, historical, biblical Christian faith as one ministry in accordance with the statement of faith, incorporated as part of these laws herein and in accordance with the policies and the guidelines of the board. Okay, so the purpose of this church is to carry forward the Christian faith. That's what we do. That's why we exist. We have a mission. And in a sense, that mission, in like most senses, all senses, that mission has nothing to do with money. And in fact, we're so committed to it that it's probably going to, if it comes to costing us money in order to carry out this mission, that's fine with us. We would like gladly give our lives. Of course, we'll give our money to it also. So motivation, a for-profit corporation is to make money. A non-profit is to carry forward the mission of the organization. Okay? Now, that's the first thing I want to say. Now, the second thing I want to say, and I struggled, I was thinking about this last night, and I'm not sure I've come up with good terminology, but I'm going to say, we already just talked about this, profit versus mission, okay? And that might be the purpose, okay? And then the next thing we might want to talk about is maybe the funding, okay? And for a for-profit company, I know, sorry, that's cut off a little bit there, you're going to have investors, okay? And you're also going to have operations, like you're going to have sales, okay? But again, taking, the safe home chimney sweep business, Josh Rennick had to do something to get himself going. He owned a truck, he had some equipment, he made some initial investment into that company, okay? But then he had sales, right? Operations, CPS customers that give him money also, okay? Now, so this is on the, over here would be on the for-profit side, and this would be the non-profit side, okay? So, now a non-profit corporation doesn't so much have investors as it has donors, right? People who want to give. Okay? But a nonprofit corporation can also have sales also. It can charge a fee for its service. That doesn't mean it's nonprofit. It's just a different and complementary funding mechanism. Like the high school I went to a private high school years ago. It was a nonprofit corporation. It has the annual fund drive, had an endowment, so it had endowment income. That came from donations. It had the annual fund where people would give for current expenses, but then it charges a boatload of tuition too. It doesn't make it nonprofit. It's just like I say, that just has to do with income and funding the mission as it goes forward. And certain parts of the mission of Greater Grace World Outreach produces income also. For example, you folks here, you pay tuition to go to Maryland Bible College and Seminary, right? We charge at Greater Grace Christian Academy. We charge at the cafe, right? Cafe has a mission, provides a place of fellowship, provides, food for people to eat, but we do charge for it, okay? And in each of those different examples I've given you, the church has different assumptions about how it wants to function. Now, generally for the Bible College and for Greater Grace Christian Academy, the church provides the buildings, and our customers provide, the ongoing, funding for the operations. Does that make sense? Okay? So, both organizations can have sales or fees for services. For-profits have investors, nonprofits have donors, okay? And then finally, probably the third distinction between these organizations is what you do if there is a surplus, okay? If you have extra money, what do you do with it, okay? With a non-profit corporation, extra money funds the mission, okay? That's what you do with extra funds. It funds the mission. That's all you do with those extra funds. Now, a for-profit corporation, surplus monies can be how do I want to say this? I'm going to use this word again. Well, spent to I'm trying to come up with the right words. Well, we'll just say spent on the company. I don't like that word, but that's the best I can come up with right now. Josh Rank might buy a new truck, right? He might buy more equipment. He might do more advertising. He might buy a building to park his trucks at night, you know. Is it Josh or Jeremy? Josh, okay, I got the right. You guys are laughing. If you're laughing at me, I got to know what that's about. Okay, so, all right, so it can be, you know, invested back into the corporation. The other thing that can happen is a surplus can be dispersed. Now, just to see if any of you are with me or ahead of me, dispersed in what way? What's the distinction I'm making? Dispersed how? Payroll, that's on the organization. That helps the operations. Okay, profit sharing, okay? It can be dispersed or as dividends, right? And I don't care about the word dividends, but I'm going to draw a little arrow back to where? Back up to the investors, okay? If it's spent on the company, that's in a sense, Greater Grace does that with its surplus funds. If we have extra money, we spend it here, right? We spend it, you know, maybe we give our employees a raise. You know, maybe we buy new furniture for the Bible college. Maybe we, you know, build a new chapel, buy new buses, all, you know, go on radio. There's all sorts of things we do that are related to furthering the mission of the church. And in that way, we're very much like a for-profit company that wants to become a bigger company. Extra monies get spent to, you know, to keep the company where it's at or to increase it. But a certain amount of this money, and that's, of course, that's up to the board of the for-profit, goes back to the investors. Okay? So, does that make sense to everybody? Okay? Now, can a nonprofit company hire people and pay them to further the mission of the company? Absolutely. Okay? Peter Taggart's on the payroll at Greater Grace World Outreach. I've got other things I do also to keep the Taggart family afloat, but this is like, I'm not like starving to death working here. I'm paid and I'm happy about it, and I use that money to keep me going, okay? Nothing wrong with that, okay? It's good and it's just and it's right when the church is able to and wants to do that, right? You don't muzzle the ox as it's treading out the grain. I know what that specifically talks about, the preaching of the Word of God, but we extend that to people that work here, okay? Wesley, you still work here sometimes, right? Volunteering, okay? So you're not on the payroll anymore. Taya works in the business office, maybe some other people also. Enrico, you work here, right? Lisa, yes, no, not so much. You've left us. Okay, yeah, I forget who comes and goes. Pastor Javid, you work here, all right? What are you doing here? You're taking care of the place so the mission can go forward, okay? Keeping the building clean is like very important. It's part of what we do. Nothing wrong with that. Good and just and right. And understand that it is perfectly acceptable, not just morally, but in terms of the world that we live in, at least in the United States. It is a known fact and accepted by the government, by the IRS, by people at large, that it is right for charitable organizations to give reasonable salaries to those who are employed by the organization. And in some cases, those reasonable salaries can be very, very large. I haven't seen it recently, but I'm pretty sure, like the president of, say, the Better Business Bureau, you know, it's a non-profit corporation, or, you know, in in Maryland. His salary is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have nonprofit hospitals, like I assume Sinai Hospital is a nonprofit. You know, it's funded like a Jewish charity. Has built up money over the years. It's this huge thing. I imagine that the president of Sinai Hospital is paid competitive wages that you would have for the president of a large corporation, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't have that number in my head, but this is how it goes. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, and certainly in those cases, the idea would be we have to hire the best talent we can get because we need the best, and we have to pay competitively, so these people come aboard, and yes, they're paid well. Why do we pay them so well? Because this guy is so valuable to help the mission of this organization go forward. Okay? That's just how it's done. Now, what is not done is that the president of Sinai Hospital or the Better Business Bureau is not in a situation where the organization runs a surplus and then he is entitled to pay himself what you called profit sharing. Maybe that's a very good word. That is not part of the equation, okay? And not only for the employees, but also for the donors, okay? The guy who, 50 years ago, gave $1 million to start the organization, X number of years later when the organization is doing well, he does not step in as, okay, I gave you the seed money, now I get something back. That's not the calculation. I gave to the mission, I had it, I gave, that gift was irrevocable, okay? As soon as I turned it over, it's no longer mine, it belongs to somebody else, namely that nonprofit corporation. I have no right to that money, okay? It was given freely, and God bless you guys, use it for the purpose for which it was given, okay? Any questions about this so far? Okay, we're going line upon line. I know I'm kind of doing this at maybe an 8th grade level here, but I just want to make sure we're getting the concepts. Yes, sir?
How does payroll work with a nonprofit? Does Social Security and everything come out?
Okay, go ahead and ask that question again in the microphones.
Yeah, how does payroll work with a nonprofit?
Okay. We will hit that question again in this course, but just for your information, because the question's being asked, in a nonprofit corporation, payroll taxes work exactly the way they work for a for-profit corporation, okay? We do not escape any payroll taxes because the payroll tax is really a tax on the employee. It's not so much a tax on the organization. That's how it's viewed. So, who's a good example here? I'm a good example. I work, I get paid here, I got to pay my taxes just like everybody else, okay? So, can anybody guess where I'm going with this, why I'm belaboring this, and the next point I'm about to make? Okay, I'm going to play the Jeopardy music here, okay? The reason I'm saying this is because, I'm sorry to ask you, are you ordained? It's been talked about, it's okay, and there are a couple other hands. Pastor Javid, definitely ordained, right? Someone laid hands on you in Baku or something, here in Baltimore. Okay, so you're ordained pastor. I know a couple other people in this room, and we encourage you in that direction. If you think God might have that for you, go for it. It's awesome. But I'm going to just make some comments here that I think are just very good for us to think about to make a point, and then we'll really be done with this, this part of it. This is a generalization, okay, and generalizations are not true. That's why they're generalizations. But there tends to be maybe two types of guys who get ordained, okay? There are people like me who tend to work under an overseeing pastor, like the guys that sort of make assisting pastors that just have that gift to help, and make the organization go and will do anything. And then you get the guy who is kind of like what I would call like a pioneering pastor, who has it in him to go out and go to a place, knock on doors, gather the people together, and really start something from nothing. You know what I'm saying? And I know, maybe I shouldn't announce it, but I know of a guy I'm somewhat close to. I believe he's going to be leaving in a few months, go to another part of the company to start a church, And Pastor Mati is definitely one of these guys that I would talk about. I think Pastor Schaller is one of these guys, Pastor Shabeli. They're not the only ones. John Perkins went to Dundalk, Pastor John Perkins. He got something going there and left it on, passed it on to Jeff McKeon. Okay, now Jeff's making a go of it. Pastor Perkins is now out in Las Vegas. There were some people out there, but these guys are like unusual men because it just takes a lot to do that. It takes, I think, and I'm not an expert on this, maybe you'll hear this in other classes, better said, but I think it takes the hand of God on you in a certain way. I think it takes a certain amount of what I would call maybe charisma or just force of person so people are attracted to you. I don't consider that carnal. I think that's something that God can use for His kingdom. It takes, you got to be able to take some hits. You know what I mean? Pastor Shabeli gave that example. He shows up in Ghana, first week there, someone says, "What are you doing here?" You know what I'm saying? So a lot comes against someone. Some of it's natural and normal, and some of it's very supernatural. So it just takes a certain kind of guy, like a tough person, to go out and do this. And you find yourself in a lot of ways really having to hear from God and ignore what's going on around you because it is coming against you. And of course, as believers, we all face this in our lives. Things come against us. But to go to another place in another country and to go through some of that, you can really find yourself like, and then the thing gets going. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you got 20 people coming out, or maybe you got 30 or 40 coming out or 100 coming out, and it's like, this is awesome. You know what I'm saying? For the purpose of this discussion tonight, there's an attack that will come on these men. And I think we've referenced it in this class already, but I just want to talk about it again. There's an attack that can come on these men, and the attack goes like this. It's like, I built this thing, okay? It is right, or I am entitled to that I should get something back out of this right now, and especially when you have a family, you know what I'm saying? My family deserves certain things. They've stuck with me through thick and thin. Now the church is prospering, and it is right that I be paid adequately so that I can bless my wife. Okay? That's kind of how the psychology or the philosophy can go. And I think if you were to go back and study the whole Jim Baker thing with 700 Club, I know that's receding back into history right now. How many, was that like 10 years or more ago? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, yeah, so it's like fading into memory. But, and that was an extreme case, and all the specifics of that case don't apply with what we're talking about tonight, but maybe I can mention it. And another reason I can mention it is that I think Jim Baker would tell the same story today. I'm not trashing the man. I think that he's dusted, the dirt off his back. He's gone on, and he's continued on in a ministry. And I respect him highly because his name at one point was really a byword in this country. But what happens is like, especially that can really be like enabled by a group of people around you who are telling you how wonderful you are. Pastor, you deserve it. It's not right that you should be living this way. You should be living this way. So this guy ended up, I think, with like this huge salary, whether it was $700,000 a year or some incredible amount of money. And the story, his wife, his now deceased wife, Tammy Faye has passed away now, but what she said publicly is they had people around them telling, "What you deserve it. It is right that you would have this money." You know what I'm saying? And then it all became public, and the whole thing crashed. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to talk about much more of the specifics of that, but the point I'm making tonight is understand that psychology, okay? And understand that there's not a person in this room who is not subject to those temptations, okay? When you're starving and you're eating rice or ramen noodles on the mission field, or you've been doing that for 10 years, and now the church gets a large gift, and your wife is complaining, it is crucial that you and I are able to say, "No, wait a minute. Everything that I gave, that was given. That was given freely. And I would give it, led by God, I would give it again. I would give it away, and I'm not expecting anything in return. Now, if I can no longer do what I'm doing, right? My convictions are now such, like I'm the pastor and I'm in that place, that I can no longer do what I'm doing unless I'm paid a certain amount of money. Absolutely, you can make that's from God. I'm not saying you can't make those statements. You know what I'm saying? You no longer can I eat rice. My wife is at her limit, and I've either got to get paid this amount or I got to go out and find a job. If you come to that place of conviction in your life, nobody in the world has a right to question that. And in fact, we're all making those decisions every day. You know what I'm saying? What is my commitment to this church? What is my commitment to the lost? You know, how much time do I want to spend working? How much do I want to, spend my time on outreach? How much money? I mean, you guys, who works with young people, with teenagers here? Okay? Some of us do. Jamie, you know that you spend money out of your pocket. I know you do. You know what I'm saying? You go to McDonald's, some kid doesn't. I just know what it's like. I did it for years, you know, and it's like awesome when you're able to do that, you know. But the time, you just got to keep your heart right, so if the time comes and you can no longer do it, you stop. You know, and that's it. I can't do it anymore, and I have a clear conscience with God instead of continuing to do what you cannot do and building up something in your heart like the church owes you some money or something. That's when it gets dangerous, very dangerous. And I just want to highlight that so that we know the purpose of a nonprofit corporation is the mission. And in the case of this church, it's to promote the faith. It is not a means where a talented, charismatic, business-like pastor goes out and starts a church, gathers people giving to the church, and then it's his right to pay himself a large salary. Okay? That is just not right. Now, what's right for a pastor to be paid? I've never thought about it so much. It's not really a part of this course. But now that we're here, the way I would look at it is, how are the people who are giving you hard-earned tithe dollars, how are they living? I think you ought to be living the way they're living. You know what I'm saying? If you've got a church full of people that are making $100,000 a year, pay yourself that. It's good and right and just. But if you've got a church of people that are making $20,000 a year and they're tithing off of that, you're going to pay yourself $50 when they're making $20? I don't know. I wouldn't. I mean, that's between you and your board and God. So, but I'm just telling you, don't use your church as a means to enrich yourself using, satanic reasoning that deceives you into thinking something that is not from God. And, I think we're far enough away from it, and I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to tell the story because I want you to know, because this can happen to you and it can happen to me. Some years ago, really at the time that Pastor Stevens was sort of like fading out, and I think that's an accurate word. He was around less and less because he couldn't be, and the church was in some turmoil, and then we went through that time, and Pastor Stevens was going to become the pastor, and became the pastor in April, May of 2005, going on 7 years ago now. There were a number of men who had been with the organization for a number of years, and I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm not, they had every right to say, hey, pastor's not here, we got a new pastor, what am I going to do with my life, okay? And the vast majority of those men, in my mind, left honorably, at least the ones I know. I'm not here to discuss that. But I just want to mention it because I want you to hear it from the horse's mouth, because I was there, and just to illustrate the point. We had one individual in particular. Not all those men knew how much money the church had in the bank. Okay, and since that time, we've gone public. The church has a substantial amount of money in the bank. We call it our reserves. And we want to have that money there in case something bad happens. We want to be able to keep cranking along. You know what I'm saying? We got a Christian school. My kid's in the Christian school. We want to be able to finish out the year and not have kids come to school someday and tell them to go home because we can't keep it going. That type of thing. We've got a pile of money in the bank, and maybe we can discuss that further on down the road. Well, some of these men didn't know about this pile of money, and it really bothered them that the church had money and they were receiving modest salaries. It bothered some of these people. One man said to me, if I had known, I would have asked. And now that I know, I'm asking. Okay, that's what one guy said to me. And then even that is somewhat reasonable. But the one statement that really got me was when a guy came and said, I want my equity in this ministry. That was how he put it. My equity in this ministry, because he'd been with the ministry for decades, had worked very hard, had done a lot for this ministry. Now I'm leaving. I realize this ministry has a pile of money. That money came from people that I brought into this church and ministered to and kept in the church for years. It is right that some of that money should be given to me. That is my equity in this ministry. And I would put it this way. Maybe it's an extreme statement, but I would put it this way. You and I have no equity in this ministry. There is no equity, right? We gave away to support the mission of the church, okay? And if the church is prospering, the church is going to make a decision about what it can pay its employees. If the church wants to have a retirement plan, that's the church's business. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. We don't have one here, but we can think about it. It's not wrong. There might be other churches that do it. So I'm not talking about how the church treats its employees. I'm talking about how people who sacrifice for a mission can have their thinking affected in such a way that they think they are owed something by the church. That's what I'm saying is dangerous, and that's why I'm spending a whole lecture talking about the differences between a for-profit and a non-profit. If you're a talented guy and you want to make money, go out and make it, okay? Make all you can, earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And I think there's some men out there, I'm not going to name them, I don't know who they are, but they have that in them, and they're better off going out and being businessmen than they are becoming pastors. They would benefit the kingdom of God more using their gifts that way. Now, I don't want to encourage that because I think generally guys tend to do that. It's the pastors and the missionaries that the devil robs, of their gift. Those are the ones that we want to keep on track. But everybody knows what I'm saying here. There's nothing, I don't know Greater Grace, but I know we and most people here, we believe in the free enterprise system. Thank God for it. We're glad we're in America. I know we got some people from other countries here that you may be closet socialists. It's okay. But I'm just saying this is how we think here. All right? And there's nothing wrong with going out and do that and supporting the church. And I know in churches, not so much this one, but other churches, we've had, very important guys in the church who had income and tithe, and it was like awesome. Now, maybe it's not the best that you would quit and go into full-time ministry, because what you're doing right now is very, very important, okay? But if you're doing it and you're giving, I talk about my, maybe I won't name the name, but you know these people. Let me put it that you know these people. That, X number of years ago, they left town, they went to a country somewhere else, and they have, been giving their lives, soul winning, evangelism. And you and I both know that they have nothing. And they're going to come back to the United States of America at some point to retire, and they're going to have nothing. And if their parents don't leave them an inheritance, it's like God help them. They have thrown themselves on the mercy of God. Okay? And that is what it is. Does the church owe them anything? No promises were made, no expectations. We'll believe God with you. Could the church give you money? Of course we could, but we might not, and you got to live with that. We got to make those decisions. Generally, our financial stance towards our missionaries is we're praying for you. You know what I mean? We give some money out, but it's dribs and drabs. There's no missionaries that I'm aware of that we support 100% or maybe even 10%. They've got it. And we kind of like it that way because I think I can say this. I'm not sure we want that relationship where people are looking to us because it's a burden that we cannot bear. And if you're on the other side of it, don't put that burden on the church that the church never agreed to take. Okay? If you want to make money, go start a business. If you want to give your life away, start a church. All right? If some years down the road the church can pay you, praise God. If you spend your whole life working a second job and working at the church and it never goes anywhere beyond that, thank God for that also. Okay, any comments, questions on that? Any testimonies anybody wants to give on that? So I think it would be reasonable for me to ask you some of the differences between a for-profit and a non-profit corporation. It would be key that you know, with surplus funds, distribution, that's really the key difference as far as this thing goes. And then why it's so important to have those differences in mind as it relates to a church. Okay, very reasonable evaluation question for the future. Okay, so it's 6:50 right now. I think we're going to reconvene at 7:05. Okay?